Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Duke Football Coverage Podcast, brought to you as always by Bull City Coordinators. Follow us on our Twitter account at DukeFB Coverage. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on all the social media sites, practically too many of them to keep count of now, so I'm not going to name them, but our DMs are open and you can always send us an email to our email address, which is bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. Now, our next guest going to have a little bit of a long introduction. He had what some, we call them rational people, would consider an illustrious career at Duke. Played wide receiver from 2009 to 2012. He helped lay the foundation for what would become arguably the greatest era of Duke football in the modern era. And during his time in Durham, he helped lead the Blue Devils to the Belk Bowl in 2012. That ended a drought of bowl games dating back to the 1994 season in the Hall of Fame Bowl. While a Blue Devil, he set ACC records for most receptions and receiving yards. Jamison Crowder later tied the receptions record, and then I believe Rashad Green of FSU would break the yardage record. And I believe this is right. He became the first ACC player to have multiple seasons of 70-plus catches, set a Duke record for career receiving yards, second team All-ACC from 2010 to 2012, tied for fifth at Duke in total receiving touchdowns, and has 2 appearances in the top 10 at Duke for receiving yards in a single season. I think I need to take a breath here. He wore number 2 and was part of one of the best Duke North Carolina games, Chapel Hill College games in rivalry history, when the Blue Devils got the win and went bowling on the famous 4th and bowl play. And on top of all of that, he has some big fans here in Roanoke, in co-coordinator Tim and his wife, Ann. Connor Vernon, how are you, sir?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Did I leave anything out as far as accomplishments? I feel like I must be missing something.
I think you actually brought things to light I didn't know were existed. So that was quite an introduction. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's a heck of a resume that speaks for itself. But one of the things that I like to do is bring people up to speed on what the guests have done since they've left Durham. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
So after post Durham, I bounced around professionally for a little bit. I had a quick stop in with the Raiders when they were in Oakland. Then the Cleveland Browns signed me, went to the Browns. Got put on a little bit with the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals, went to their training camp, and then had a small tryout with Detroit after that. And then once kind of football was over, came back to Miami and where I'm from, hometown, and kind of was figuring it out. And now I do, started about 3 years ago. I work in wealth management now with Morgan Stanley.
How did you get into wealth management?
Funny enough, kind of just it was something that I'll be honest, didn't exactly see myself doing post college, and kind of was at home and thinking about what to do next. And a friend of mine at the time was at Morgan Stanley, still is, but he was a manager there, and we were just having a conversation one day, and he had known I had a lot of contacts in the sports world, and I had a big network in the sports world and stuff like that. And so kind of just leveraged that into the wealth management side. So yeah, I help athletes and entertainers and stuff like that on a different side of the game now.
Wealth management and growing your money is not something that I think is taught well enough in public school systems. If you could just kind of give a brief what we should know, or what people maybe should know and be thinking about as they enter the working world in regard to growing their portfolio and saving for retirement.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a case by case thing, but I certainly don't think it's and this is just me speaking from my experience. I don't know how other schools do it or other things do it. I mean, obviously I wasn't a, business background per se at Duke. So when I kind of entered the real world, I didn't really have a full grasp of it. I think they could certainly do a better job with it, collectively, because I think that's kind of been a consensus too throughout from other former athletes and stuff that I've talked to and heard from, and things like that, as far as just kind of like a simple, wealth education class type of thing, just kind of get you ready for the real world in a way.
Do you think that I'm curious where that might stem from? I remember I tried a case once. It was just a damages portion of it. And I was trying to get the jury over their reluctance to kind of discuss money and talk about money. And one of the things I said to him is, we don't like to talk about money. We consider it private. We don't like to have that conversation with people, certainly not with strangers. I mean, do you think that's part of it? It's just a cultural aversion to discussing monetary matters?
I think so, yeah, because it's really, I think, again, and I just say this based on my experience and stuff like that. It's kind of, each person might be in a different position than the other. So it's kind of, I don't think there's necessarily just a, generalization when it comes to kind of, wealth and wealth education and things like that. I mean, I think there's certain fundamentals that can be, from a broad spectrum, but it's just one of those things that I think personally, it's just more like a case by case situation where we're kind of, scared to talk about it.
Well, I'm interested about your work with athletes. Haven't had an opportunity to interview a lot of folks like yourself who played football and then have transitioned to something else. What would you say to them that they should know, or at least be thinking about, in regard to how to grow their portfolio and how to start planning for the rest of their lives monetarily?
Yeah, I would just say separate the difference between want and need. There's like I would just say that's kind of the biggest thing. I don't, can't go into too much detail, but yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is just separate want and need.
I got you. Well, talk a little bit about your NFL experience. And one thing that I'm always interested in hearing about is what it's like for guys who play at the highest level, who are very competitive, and then their playing career comes to an end. I've talked to guys like Clarkston Hines about that, Randy Cuthbert, some of your teammates too. And they always have very interesting things to say about that. What would you tell athletes who, a lot of them are going through that right now? This is going to be the last time they really play football. What advice would you give to them to help them through that process?
I mean, really just enjoy it. I know that sounds cliche, but it's kind of the truth, in the sense of, like, it is kind of done just like that. I know when I stopped playing, like, I didn't think when I stopped playing that would kind of be the end for me. So I kind of look back and maybe didn't necessarily enjoy certain moments as much as I should have, in a way, just because I didn't think that would have been my last time, putting the helmet on, or my last time going to practice and things like that. So really, I just enjoy it, because you don't do it forever, that's for sure. And if you're blessed enough to be successful where, you don't need another profession after that, that's amazing. But it's kind of one of those things where, I think it's, 99% or 95% of the guys, are going to need to find another profession type of thing. So it ends at some point. So really just enjoy it. I would say just enjoy it to the fullest. And because, you never really know when that last time is going to be.
I think you've also done some Duke radio work since you have transitioned out of playing professional football. Is that right?
Yeah, that was kind of like a spur of the moment thing, to be honest. It was one of those things. I mean, I've obviously, Dave Harding and I, who's, worked with Duke Radio for, since we had graduated, him and I were in the same class, played together, kept in close relationship, kept in contact throughout the years. And every time I would go back to Durham for a game and whatnot, I would always kind of make an effort to see him. I've seen him live in the booth before and things like that. Same with David Shoemate, who's, another who've grown to be a friend through Dave and stuff like that. So it was always cool just to see those guys, go to work and operate. I mean, they get to talk about football all day long, what kind of, what's better than that. So then just this past year, they were coming down to Miami and Dave Harding had actually, his wife had gone into labor, so he didn't make the trip, and I kind of got the call there last minute to see if I just kind of wanted to fill in for him and give some color to the game. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, I was a little like, intimidated at first because didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it was a blast. I mean, David Shoemate's an all-star in that world, and he kind of made it real easy for me and just teed up a lot of things for me, and it was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I listened to you guys on the radio. I thought you did a great job, and Shoemate gets real high, and I thought you kind of mellowed him down a little bit, which was good. A couple things I want to ask you about that Miami game, and I'll get to it in a minute. First, I want to say you mentioned that you stay in touch with David Harding. I've heard that's very difficult to do. And I would just like to say, if you have any ins with Harding, he told me he was interested in coming on the podcast, and now he's gone radio silent again. I think it took him 2 years to respond to a Twitter message I sent him. So do you have any advice on how to get in touch with Harding on a regular basis?
I don't. I mean, fortunately, I've been fortunate enough that he responds to me. So I haven't had an issue of getting him on the phone. But I mean, I will say this in his defense. I know he's a real busy guy, because there have been moments where we've gone radio silent in a sense, but kind of come back around. But he is a busy guy. I'm sure he'll come back around.
Yeah, Joey Finnison said that I was on a long list of people that were waiting to hear back from Dave Harding, but he does a great job too, and he's an excellent representative on radio in general for the Blue Devils. But let's talk a little bit about the Miami game. How awesome was that to watch?
That was amazing. I mean, obviously, a lot of fun just to kind of see Duke play. And with the new regime and stuff like that, I had been in the Carolina game earlier that year, but just to kind of have a Budo team coming in there that was looking really good to play, Miami, and then and obviously the outcome was incredible. Just that second half kind of just blew the doors open. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, do you plan on doing any more radio in the future if the opportunity presents itself? Do you think it's something you're going to pursue?
I would love to. And I told those guys that, like, if, something ever presented itself, for sure, like, I'm in. As far as like pursuing it actively, I would say not. Like, if things showed up or if things came across, like if I got called about something or emailed about something with an opportunity, I would definitely not, completely shut it down. I would explore the opportunity for sure.
Well, you mentioned you were at the Carolina game, and I hate to bring this up, but give me your thoughts on how that game ended, and the chop block.
Tragically, the chop block. Honestly, I can't defend because it was, I don't think that was necessarily the call that changed it. I think it was the one right after.
The illegal shift or procedure?
That's the one. Yeah, the illegal shift, I think, was, look, like, it's obviously easier for me to say this as, a Duke fan and stuff like that, but as a fan of the game and understand the circumstances and outcomes of games, like, I don't think you make that call in that situation. Sure, if it's, if it was blatant, like, to me, it didn't look totally blatant. But like, it's one thing if it happened in the first quarter, when nothing was meaningful, but, that was 2 back-to-back scores that were taken away, really, that all of a sudden, went from a touchdown to out of field goal range. And it was, a swing that, ultimately decided the game, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, Duke still had a chance to win that game. we just came up short. We didn't finish, but that illegal shift there was, I don't understand that call. I just at that point in time in the game.
And in your experience, do refs start to swallow the whistle a little bit more as the game gets tighter, it goes on, it gets late?
I think it depends. I mean, if I was officiating a game, I would never want to, let the game take care of itself in a way. Like don't necessarily, make a game about a single call. In my opinion, now I've never obviously, put the hat on and the whistle and done it, but I just and again, as a player and as a fan, unless something is absolutely blatant at those last minutes of the game, just let the game take care of itself.
That's a good way to look at it, because I think you're right. I don't think the officials should be putting themselves in the position where they open themselves up to that criticism. Let's switch gears a little bit and go from terrible penalty flags that cost Duke a chance at a 10-win season to what brought you to Duke. How did you end up playing football at Duke?
It was a few things. I don't know if I could singly narrow it down to one. Obviously, for me coming out, education was a huge thing. That was kind of something my parents really wanted me to explore. That's why kind of my final schools were Wake Forest, Duke, and Vanderbilt, really. And ultimately, it just came down to the coaching staff, like Coach Cutt and Scotty Montgomery, who coached me, also a former Blue Devil. He recruited me. Coach Cutt recruited me, and it ultimately came down that was kind of the deciding factor. Obviously, Duke being the school it is, spoke for itself, but kind of the vision those two had, because my class was officially Duke or Coach Cutcliffe's first official recruiting class, because the class before me, he had kind of inherited, because I think he had got the job in January and signing day was in February. So we were his first kind of real official recruiting class. And it was just kind of, like I said, their vision they had for the future and what was to come. And I definitely wanted to play for Scotty Montgomery at the time. And that was kind of ultimately the deciding factor.
What was the vision that those guys sold you on? What appealed about their vision to you?
I mean, kind of just the offense they had in mind and what was going to move forward. I mean, obviously Coach Cutt with having, the success at Tennessee, and then obviously the success at Ole Miss with Peyton and Eli. Though that was obviously, so from an offensive standpoint, who better than to play for someone like that. But also too, just the direction of the program with facilities and where they wanted to take it. I mean, obviously, Coach Cutt was coming from the SEC, had an SEC background, so he had seen kind of how those programs operated, and he wanted to kind of bring that to Durham. And finally, by my senior year, we kind of or my spring of my junior year, we kind of started seeing the fruits of the labor with new facilities, upgrades all over the facilities, upgrades in equipment. From the time I had got there to my senior year, just the equipment as far as gear we would get annually and stuff like that through the equipment room and stuff was, I mean, 2 times. We were getting double what we got, right when we got on campus. And so it was a lot of that.
Well, I'm just curious a little bit about, having had a chance to speak with a lot of your former teammates, the mindset that you guys all had as a collective. A lot of what they've said is, look, we may not have been the most highly sought after recruits, but we were going to prove what we could do. Talk a little bit about kind of what mindset you all had during your time at Duke.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we weren't a bunch of, 5-star kids coming in here. It wasn't your typical Alabama recruiting class or stuff like that, but we knew we had guys that could play, as a collective. We a ton of athletes, and with good coaching and kind of the right schemes and stuff like that, we could have been effective for sure. We had a lot of confidence in ourselves. Like, I mean, we didn't show up and we're beating our chest thinking we were going to win a national title, but we thought we could for sure compete and be competitive in the ACC, and at least do the bowl games thing and stuff like that. Even probably sooner than we did it, to be honest. Um, but between our class, kind of buying into what the older guys had shown us, and then being now all of a sudden being kind of the leaders to the younger guys, it kind of came full circle, and then finally our senior year, we were able to get over that hump. Because even leading before that, I think my sophomore year, I think 2010, I'm sure I'll get fact checked on this, but I think 2010 we finished 3-9, but 7 of the 9 losses were by an average of like 6 points or something like that. Like, we had a chance to kind of win the game there. We just couldn't figure out a way to close it. And that was the biggest difference between that year and then, and the year after that. And my senior year was, that senior year, we were able to find games to win, like in the fourth quarter, like North Carolina is a perfect example of that. We were able to do that my senior year, when years prior, we probably would have not have pulled that off.
Well, to your point about the close losses, in 2010, you lost to Wake by 6 in one of the classic Duke Wake 54-48 games.
Yep.
Lost by 5 to Maryland, lost by 5 to Boston College, by 10 to Georgia Tech, which is not too huge of a loss, and then by 5 to North Carolina. And then again in 2011, you lost by 2 to Richmond, by 1 to Wake, by 4 to Virginia Tech, by 10 to Virginia, by 7 to Georgia Tech, which was ranked 23 at the time. So you guys were not very far away from either of those 2 seasons from having a good year.
Yeah, like I said, I think that was kind of the biggest difference between those, or 2012 to those years, is where it finally found a way to close. And then with that, it came that, and the years right after 2013 and 14, I mean, they had a ton of fourth quarter victories. Those 10 win. I think they won 10 games, and then 9 games. Won the Coastal in 2013. And if you go look at those were a ton of fourth quarter victories, just finding a way to win those games. Like, and that was, I think, kind of the biggest difference between, the years I was there versus kind of Duke now, is they got, that stuff's contagious in a way. Like, that feeling's contagious in a sense of knowing kind of when your back's against the wall, there's still hope in a way. They were able to do that for a while after the years after.
One of the things about the close losses was it seemed like, that turned into close wins, was a lot of times it would just be one player in the right position. And oftentimes that player was Devon Edwards, be it with an interception or a punt return. And then it was Sean Wilson in the Pinstripe Bowl. But you played with a lot of all-time Duke greats. You had Thad Lewis, Jamison Crowder. You had Donovan Varner there, Brandon Kennett, guys like Desmond Scott, Sean Renfrey, Anthony Boone. I mean, and then that doesn't even get into all the running backs that were there, like Snead and Thompson. I mean, we could go on for a long time. And we haven't even gotten to the defensive side of the ball yet, really. But tell us a little bit about what the receiving core was like during your time at Duke. What were those guys like as teammates? And then what was the group mentality?
It was great. I mean, the one thing I'll say about Duke and our offense those years, there was a lot of ball going around. So we definitely played off each other and competed off each other, and kind of pushed ourselves to be better. There was the camaraderie in the room was great. We all wanted to win. We all had the same goal. We didn't really care so much about the stats per se, but we just had a lot of dudes who were just willing to compete and come in and push each other.
Talk to us a little bit about where you guys went from in 2009, where you were 5-7 and really close to going to a bowl, and it felt like you were maybe just about to break through, then to the mood of the team through those 2, 3, and 9 seasons. What was that transition like, and how did you all handle those 2 years?
It was tough, I would say, for sure. I mean, obviously, especially in those November cold winter practices, when you're getting to that last few games of the season and you're not going to a bowl game and whatnot, just still coming out though and competing. And we knew, like I was telling, I mean, you just rattled it off. We knew we were there, we were right there, I should say. Obviously, we weren't getting the job done, but so we knew we were headed in the right direction. It was just about finding that way to kind of get over that hump late in the games.
Well, talk to us a little bit, and we'll get into the 2012 season in a little bit, because I do want to spend a lot of time on that, because that was just such a magical season, that stretch. But you played with a lot of different quarterbacks in your time at Duke. Was that challenging for you at all? Or did you have to just adjust to it? I'm just kind of curious, what's it like as a wide receiver having to be ready for a guy like Thad Lewis, then a guy like Kennett, Renfrey, and also Boone?
Yeah, it was, I mean, they were all great, so that wasn't too much. So it wasn't like there was a big drop off from one or the other as far as kind of change it goes. I mean, obviously each of them had their own, each of them did better things or did things better than the other. But I mean, during practice and stuff like that, I think our coaches did a good job in kind of getting us with the right guys and kind of building that chemistry with the right guys. And that was kind of what the off season was for too, obviously, especially in those summer days and stuff like that, when we would do just individual stuff without the coaches. We would all work, with different quarterbacks and stuff like that.
One question I want to ask before we get into the 2012 season is, having watched some highlights of you and having seen the bowl games replayed, I don't think I appreciated this as much at the time when you were there, but it seemed like you were really good at letting the other players know you caught the ball and had gotten a first down. It seemed like you were not afraid to talk some smack to the other guys now and again. Am I misreading your body language on camera at all?
No, I mean, I would say, honestly, my first three years were worse than my senior year. My senior year, I kind of let my game talk more, and I think I found more success in it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was still the moments of banter, but sometimes you get caught up in that, and it could be, it could be used against you in a way that's actually affecting your own game. It's a mind game, and you're kind of messing yourself up instead of focusing on what you got to do. You're thinking about other things. So my senior year, I kind of wheeled that back a little bit, but definitely, yeah, my first moments were or my first couple of years were, I was talking for sure.
Well, I think looking at some other highlights, I think Max McCaffrey took over that role for you really well when he came in there. If I did my research correct, you were a captain for the 2012 year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
What did that mean to you to be a captain?
It was good. It was nice. I mean, obviously, it was kind of one of those things where you felt some self-validation in a way, kind of your teammates and coaches kind of recognizing the hard, your effort and energy kind of put into the program the last 3 years, and having them look up to that, and me wanting to, and them wanting to kind of lead them for that year certainly was validating for sure.
One of the things that I heard about the 2013 season was that the players almost felt like they didn't really need the coaches around, that they held each other accountable and they communicated expectations to each other. Was that similar to how you guys were in 2012?
Yeah. I would definitely say in the summer for sure. We kind of did a lot of, self practices as far as, the players went. A lot of nothing mandatory kind of thing, to be honest. But, we just had a bunch of guys who wanted to work, and, and it started from the top, which was, myself, Sean Remfrey, Jameson Crowder, and stuff like that. Desmond Scott, my senior year also. We just had guys from the top, especially on offense, like the Sneeds, Josh Sneed as well, at the top who wanted it. And I think it kind of just had a trickle down effect, and kind of the younger guys saw that, and it kind of just carried it over into the following years.
When did you guys feel that 2012 might be different from the seasons that had preceded them?
We think we started 6-2, so maybe at that point.
Well, you knew it was then,
Yeah.
but was there a time before that you all felt, because Cutcliffe was bullish about that season? He in the preseason, he said, he was saying things basically to the effect of, and this isn't an exact quote, but hey, this can be a different year. Did you as players ever get that sense that, hey, this is not going to be another 3-9 season before you guys were 6-2?
Yeah, I definitely thought, definitely not a 3-9 season. The reality of the situation is, every year I got there that summer, or we were going into camp that year, you always felt it was a different team. And obviously, our record said differently. But that year, I will say what felt different was we finally had kind of a group of guys that had all bought in. We were, this was that coaching staff for that team, I guess at the time, had 4 years. This was their 4th recruiting class. So kind of like this was all their guys now, kind of like guys before them or guys before myself were out of the program already. And so these were all kind of like, this is coaching staff's guys, like Cuts guys, these recruiting class. So we had 4 years of really a solid core and a team that we knew. And and it showed, obviously. We started out great. That first game again, it was Elon, right? That first game against Elon. No, it was
FIU.
FIU, yeah. Elon was my sophomore year. That first game against FIU, because in 2010 we played them, and we beat them, but it was down here in Miami, and that was a really good team. And like we went down to the wire. And I think the year before that, they had just won the Sun Belt. And, Mario Cristobal was the coach over there, and he was doing a really good job. I think they won 9 games the year before we had played them that year or something like that. So we didn't think it was going to be some first game tune-up, that's for sure, going into that week. And, seeing how we performed and kind of putting up the points we did and dominating them like that, that's what kind of felt like, okay, like we might have something here. And then going into Wake Forest the next week, and a team that we hadn't beaten in the last 6 times or something or whatever, maybe even more than that.
I think it was a decade.
Yeah, a decade, could have been. And then finally getting over that hump. So then, yeah, it was one of those where then we had to go to Stanford, play a tough, good Stanford team that, it was first half, it was close, and then they kind of ran away with it. But just I would probably say after that FIU game that we thought we had something, because just at that time FIU was, they had just won the Sun Belt. They were winning 9 games a year. They were still a really good team. So I would probably say after that FIU game, felt good.
Well, one of the things you talked about was getting everybody to buy in. What does it take to get that to happen? Because you saw it this year. All the guys bought into Elko. They all bought into the new conditioning program. They were all locked in. What does it take to have that happen?
That's the one thing I'll say was most impressive to me this year, was not so much the turnaround and stuff like that. was just more of having kind of a new regime come in and being successful that quickly. And having, to your point, having those guys buy into what he was selling. I mean, it takes a collective for sure, and just a real belief in what they're doing. And obviously, Coach Elko had the resume to come in there and do what he did. I don't know him personally. I haven't got the chance to meet him yet, but obviously knew of him at Texas A&M and things of that sort. So him to go over there and with that staff and kind of implement their scheme and their, ways of how they're going to run this program and have guys buying in so quickly, and to see that kind of success without really the real growing pains of building a program was, I mean, hats off. Like, I don't know how you to do it that quick again is more impressive to me than the 8 wins.
What do you think it takes from the coaching staff side to get the players to do that? I mean, you guys had bought into Cutcliffe, obviously, even though you guys had gone through 2 rough seasons. But what do you think that it takes from the coaching staff to get the players all to buy in?
I mean, they have to believe what they're selling, because you can't tell a kid one thing if you don't believe it. So for them, I got to imagine they came in every single day of that building from day 1 to day 150, whatever and how long the football season is. They were kind of selling that same thing, and that's how you do it. Because if there's 1 ounce of like, I don't believe what you're selling, you're not going to convince anybody.
One thing too that I've had some coaches say to me is that it's always important to have the entire coaching staff aligned together on everything. And there have been some kind of references to times where they've been on other staffs where the coaches are kind of more looking out for themselves. Did it always seem to you that the coaching staff at Duke was fully aligned with the mission, with the program and the vision that Cutcliffe had laid out?
Yeah, 100%. There was never a moment, I went into the building and, and even truth be told, we were playing, like, even the years we played Alabama in 2010 and stuff like that, I think everybody knew what was going to be the outcome of that game, going into it. But that whole week, those coaches, made us believe that we had a legit chance. And same thing with Stanford in 2012. I mean, that's when Stanford was, winning the Pac-12 regularly. And, I think going into that game, there was kind of the elephant in the room, like, not that we don't belong, but, you guys are just better. But that whole week leading up to it, I thought going into that game, we would have had a better chance than we ended up doing, to be honest. And that was because of them. I mean, that was what they were selling. And that whole week of practice, like, we were scheming up stuff and things like that. And we had bought in. We bought into it.
Well, let's talk about the 6th win of the season that you guys got in 2012 against Chapel Hill College there. You come in with 5 wins. You're playing Carolina, who has beaten you guys, I think, every year since 2004. I think beating you guys at home for the first time since, maybe, if my research was right, 1988. What was the mindset of the team going into that game?
Man, we obviously knew what was at stake, and not only it being Carolina week, but also, being at that 5-win mark, it being a night game. I mean, it was different. That was I'll never forget. That was the one time the true one time that I walked out of like pregame for Wallace Wade and the whole thing, and kind of seeing that crowd and seeing that atmosphere was like, man, like this is college football. Like this is what, this is what makes college football so great. And it was, I mean, yeah, like that was just going, like I said, we knew what was at stake going into it. And we kind of, I mean, again, like me personally, I kind of didn't I try not to let all the outside noise, be too loud, and kind of just let the game take care of itself. And we knew in the past we had played them well always and competitively. So it wasn't like we didn't think we belonged on the field at all. It was just kind of one of those things like, could we make enough plays to win the game? And we did.
Well, you guys pretty well had them on the ropes until late in the fourth quarter, I think, with a fake punt or onside kick or something. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've watched that game. But you all are pretty well in control of that game till the fourth quarter. So when Carolina puts up 21 in the fourth quarter and the lead's going back and forth, what's the mood, the collective mood of the team on the sideline? Are y'all going through peaks and valleys? Are y'all staying flat? What's happening?
It was kind of, and again, like this was a while, it was, a long time ago, but I know me personally, it was kind of like the same thing. Cause I hate to say it, but like I had seen this movie before, like I had seen this moment of, we winning the whole game and all of a sudden just let it slip away from us at the end. And that to me was kind of the turning point, in my opinion, of Duke football, was moments like that, because, the years before that, you were to tell me that we'd have 80 yards or we'd have to go 80 yards down. I think we were down three, down three, I believe. Yeah, I'd like to go 80 yards down three with a minute 20 left or whatever it was left to win the game. I would have said, oh, well, we lost. But that, us being able to kind of do that, I think for me just changed the trajectory of the program.
Well, you had a pretty good game, 6 catches for 124 yards. Not bad numbers. But walk us through that last drive and kind of what's Renfrey doing? What are the coaches doing? What are you guys as leaders doing to keep everybody calm and collected and go out and do your job?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously, one of those things where we felt offensively, we felt confident all day, because I mean, even in the first half of that game, we were in the red zone a few times, ended up settling for field goals, but we had no issues that night moving the football offensively. So we were confident in that. I mean, obviously, being up like that and then them taking the lead, just the way they took the lead, it wasn't necessarily so much of them taking the lead, but having them take the lead on such a crazy play where, we had our defense made a play. We had a chance to kind of get it there. And then their guy came out of nowhere and our guy, mistimed the ball there. And then their guy scooped and scored. It was kind of just this crazy, like what just happened, like gut punch of a play. So that was kind of a little hard to swallow, but, seeing it up at the clock, knowing we had a chance to win, we kind of huddled up and, all hats off goes to Sean Renfrey. He kind of just huddled up and said, hey, let's do this kind of thing. And we went to work. And, I think we completed 3 or 4 third downs on that drive too, kind of just to add it to that. And then I know the last play was 4th down. The throw to Jameson was on 4th down. So, multiple times in that drive, we had to make plays when we needed to, and we did.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that 4th and goal play. And you guys, I think that was the when people started realizing that Duke had a pretty good O-line that got better over the next couple of years as those guys played together more. But Renfrey had time to throw. I think he rolled a little bit maybe to his right, and then he finds Crowder, and we know what happens. But just walk us through that play. You're right. It's fourth down. It's your last chance. Walk us through what happens.
Yeah, that was funny enough. Jameson was actually Sean to their point of offensive line protecting him. That was Sean's last read on that play. And so originally we went empty with no one in the backfield. We got man across the board. We knew if we went empty, they'd give us man. So it was essentially they had moved me into the inside. I had ran like a fade. Because it was, again, we got man across the board, so it was 1-on-1, and it was basically up to Sean to kind of pick the best matchup he liked. It was I was on the inside and ran like a fade to like the corner. The guy outside of me just kind of had like an underneath to kind of just pull that DB away. And then on the other side with Desmond and Jameson, they had kind of like a double in route concept. And Sean looked at me, didn't like what he saw, went over to Desmond. Again, there was just a ton of traffic at that point. And then kind of Jameson was there on the outside, and Sean put it up. And Jameson guy was able to get inside on the guy. And Sean had put it up in the air where only he could get it. And obviously Jameson made a acrobatic catch to seal the deal.
How meaningful was that win to you guys? Obviously, you're beating a rival, right? You're beating a rival, but that game was more than just beating a rival because you were going to go bowling. So what did that win mean to you all?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I don't think it couldn't have been scripted better in a way, just for us to finally, as a team, to get over that hump, to get to a bowl, and then to get to a bowl and to do it against them. Like, it's kind of like it literally was storybook in a way, like perfect in a way. And it was great. Like, and I had mentioned before, that game to me changed the trajectory of the program, in my opinion. Like, it showed us, like, the team, that, hey, like, we could be down, if we get the ball last, we're going to win the game. It was kind of one of those things. And like I said, I really do believe they carried that over into 13 and 14, because if you go back and look at those games, especially the game, especially the 13 year when they won 10 games. I mean, they beat Virginia Tech on the road by we got the ball and, needed 2 first downs to win the game, essentially, and we're able to get it done. Whereas teams before, we're probably going 3 and out and having to punt it back to them, and now we got to win on defense. Even Carolina again that year, I believe, was a fourth. We picked it in the fourth quarter to seal the deal. Like, defense ended up picking in Chapel Hill that year. Defense came up with a play at the end there to pick it off to seal the deal. There was, like I said, you can go to that tape and there's a ton of fourth quarter victories. And I think, that Carolina game helped start it. Unfortunately, after, my senior year, that Carolina game, we ran into a gauntlet of the schedule, and we couldn't close out anything. I mean, Clemson beat us up pretty good. Florida State beat us up pretty good. Georgia Tech, we kind of let slip away. And then I don't even know, in Miami, we scored 48, I think, and lost. So I think it was like 52 or something to 48 or something like that.
Yeah, that game. Yeah, because you guys played Florida State, was ranked 10, then Clemson, who was ranked 9, then Georgia Tech, who wasn't ranked. And you're right, that game got out of hand late. It was 17-21 at the half, and then they outscored you 21-7 in the second. Okay. But the Miami game, you guys put up 21 points in the fourth quarter, ended up losing by 7, 52-45. And it seemed like kind of the lights had come back on and you guys were clicking again, and, went into that bowl game with a lot of confidence and playing well. unfortunately, it slipped away from you guys like so many did for so long, it seemed like. But what was it like to be going to a bowl game that season after everything that you had been through? And then I'll have another thing I want to follow up on you on that one.
That was fun, obviously, to kind of have that last ride with those guys and have the bowl experience. No one up until that point had the bowl experience. So being able to do that was a blast. Being it right down the road in Charlotte was nice. So we had a good Duke crowd out there. And that was fun. And obviously, Cincinnati at the time was a good team. And we put up a fight. I mean, we had a couple of things there. I think we fumbled twice on the goal line in that game. They had Travis Kelce, now it's, he wasn't now. Now it's easy to say, oh yeah, that happened. But back then you didn't know who he was in a way. And he had I think they had a 95-yard reception or something like that. He kind of hit the sideline one time, like when we had him backed up deep. And yeah, we kind of let that one slip away a little bit too. I mean, that hats off to Cincinnati. They were, they're a good team and they closed it out, but we definitely played well enough to win that game. That's for sure. We just, didn't make the plays when it counted.
Yeah. I think it was Carlos Ray who said there was just this flash of white going down the sideline. And he said, who in the world was that?
Yeah.
Now we all know who that is. It's Travis Kelce.
Yeah. He was a problem back then. I mean, still is, but he was definitely a problem back then. Well,
the game ended in a painful way, obviously, not just with the score, but for Sean Renfree. He had a bad injury there at the end. But looking back on your time at Duke, I'm just curious what you're most proud of your time there. It could be on the field, off the field.
Most proud of, I mean, definitely, the politically correct answer, but obviously definitely graduating. Like being able to walk away with a Duke degree is something that I don't think I would have thought, when I was in high school and stuff like that, whatever happened. I don't think, you ask anyone in my family, they would tell you the same thing. They never thought I'd be the one to graduate from Duke. So certainly that degree, but obviously my senior year was a lot of fun. Winning makes things a lot easier. That's for sure. So that first half of that football season was a blast. And like I said, being that first team to get to a bowl game for a long time was certainly, something to be proud of for sure.
Well, one thing that I like to do, you spent almost an hour with me and I appreciate it. And I didn't realize it when we agreed to set this up that the national championship, I guess, has started right now. Not that I'm really going to watch it. I hate to say this, but I don't particularly care that much about it. But one thing that I like to do for all the guests who come on is give them an open mic so they can talk about whatever they want. I mean, you all listen to me ask you a lot of questions, so I think it's only fair to give you a chance to say anything that you'd like to say or address any topic that you'd like to address.
No, I appreciate you letting me come on. It was fun. I'm obviously definitely excited to see what the future holds for Duke football. That's for sure. Hopefully, we could keep Elko around a long time, but unfortunately, if he keeps having seasons like this, I don't know how long he'll be around. But I'm definitely excited to see what the future holds for them. I look forward to getting back up there again this year at some point for a game for sure. I'm just excited to see what the future holds for them.
Well, and I'm going to impose on a little bit more of your time because you said something that I want to follow up on. Is I've had this conversation with other people who've come on, and I'd be curious to get your take because you mentioned that the Duke Carolina game was the first time you really felt like it was kind of big time college football. What do you think it's going to take to keep Elko there? Obviously winning, right? He's going to have to keep winning, but as far as support from the community, from the university, what do you think it's going to take to keep that there?
I mean, definitely winning for sure. And just, yeah, like, and I will say this, they did a good job. Like when I went up there this year for the Carolina game and kind of seeing the way that the new system they put in place for tailgating and kind of the double walk and stuff like that. I certainly think they are making it more football proactive and trying to get that. As far as the community goes, I think it's trying to develop, I would say, kind of maybe to develop that kind of tradition in Duke basketball. I know it's tough to compare, as when you're comparing 5 national championships, Coach K, and things like that. But I really don't see the difference in the two, as when they're right next to each other in a way. So the same people who are going to basketball games could, same people will be showing up to football games. But again, obviously winning changes all that. So I think the more and more they win, you'll definitely see a lot more of the seats filled up. And for what it's worth, I would say this: unfortunately on TV and in the public, it is a little deceiving. Don't get me wrong, because obviously, because the skyboxes and the Blue Double Tower is slammed. There's a ton of people in there, and those people used to be down in the seats, so now they're all up top. But I definitely think there'll be more of a turnout coming next year, and kind of see once what winning does, you'll see people start showing up more.
Well, I'm just curious what you think about this, because you guys played NC State regularly when you were there. Do you think going to, and I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but I think it's the 3-5-5, where Duke's going to play State and Wake and Carolina regularly, will help bringing people in?
I do. I mean, because obviously you'll have, it's a battle of the triangle in a way. You could spin it that way, type of thing. I think so. I mean, I think with the new format of the ACC, and then again, just if Duke continues the path they're on and keeps winning, and bringing new guys in every year, and kind of that excitement just carries over into each year, I think you'll see more people showing up for sure.
Well, and I'm just curious, do you think it seems like there's more of an emphasis now from the top down on engaging the student athlete, or the students to come out and to support the student athletes on the football program? Mm-hmm. Did you notice a difference when you were there for the Carolina game compared to your 4 seasons at Duke?
I mean, it's tough to say, because unfortunately that weekend we would always play Carolina. Like when I was there, we played Carolina Thanksgiving, like the last of the year type of thing. That was always the last year. Like Wake and Carolina were always the last games on the schedule. So, with the holidays and stuff like that, a lot of students would have were gone. And then I know my senior year finally switched that, where he moved the Carolina game up, so there was more of a presence. So I mean, yeah, those last games of the year are going to be hard or tougher sell, just because of the holidays and stuff like that. But I mean, I think there'll still be. I mean, there was always a good presence, I'd say, for those games. Obviously, big rivalry games. But I mean, I saw a different side of it, because I wasn't tailgating or anything like that before. Like, I didn't see the crowd, like what crowd was there before. But I mean, that, like I said, that crowd, my 2012 year was, I mean, doesn't get better than that. So obviously we're capable of it. It's just a matter of doing it, regularly.
And I mean, obviously you mentioned that winning will get it out there. And I think that if Elko were to average 8 wins a year for however long he's at Duke, you're going to fix a lot of that, right? If he's there for long enough. But other than that, from an administration point of view, to encourage the students to get out there, I mean, what kind of insight maybe do you have, or advice for them about how to get more butts in seats?
Oh man. That's a good question. I mean, I haven't really. The only thing is more of a. I mean, because they do make it pretty interactive. Like I will give them that. Like they do. I mean, obviously I know this has been a certainly a recurring theme. I would imagine, in the marketing meetings and stuff like that, and dealing with the sports administration side of the business. So, and I know they do a really great job, and I know there's a lot of effort from them to get it done. Because, like I said, it's certainly not going unheard. That's for sure, as from the Duke side of it. So, I'll certainly give them that. They are making the effort, and I not only have I seen it firsthand, but just from talking to people as well. They are certainly making it a priority to make this happen. It's just, yeah, it's kind of finding that I guess golden ticket, if you would, of like what's going to really flip this switch. And I think it just comes with time. I mean, honestly, I think we had a program that was a doormat for so long that it's still kind of taking time and getting used to winning, and more than just basketball. And that's in all sports too, because I mean, Duke's very competitive in all sports. So to be honest with you, I mean, I think their soccer team made it to the Elite Eight this year, something like that. Their lacrosse team, when I was there, won 2 national titles. Baseball was a game away from Omaha recently, or maybe last year it was, or something like that. So, I mean, Duke from an athletic standpoint is certainly competitive across all sports. So now it's just gonna, I think just with that evolution, you'll start seeing more people come out.
Well, Connor, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for spending part of a Monday doing this interview. You were a really fun player to watch. Your whole group, that whole class, and all those guys who were there, you all were a special breed. And I mean this with in a complimentary way only. You all had a lot of crazy in you, and it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch that. And you all really laid a foundation for a great era of Duke football. And thank you so much for being a part of it. And thank you so much for coming on. We are working on lining up some other guests. Like I'd indicated, after a rush in December, this may be a scaled back season 3, but it should be very entertaining. We have another former NFL player lined up in early March, if that interview holds. And hey, guys, go to our website, go to our Twitter account. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. I hope we'll have some more good interviews for season 3, and I hope we have a wonderful, wonderful 2023 season. Dad, I know you're listening. I'll see you in a couple of weeks when I get back down there, and we'll catch up and talk a little bit more then. As always, go Duke.